Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Coffee with Convery, where we caffeinate your curiosity with bold stories, actionable insights, and fresh takes on how we define and design success. Today's guest is known as the Food Professor, a globally authority on food distribution, policy, and supply chains. Please welcome Dr. Sylvain Charlebois, Senior Director of Agri-Food Analytics Lab at Dalhousie University, Professor, award-winning researcher, and trusted voice in the future of food systems. For over 9 years, Sylvain has been advancing food traceability, security, and sustainability through research that doesn't just stay in the lab. It influences policy, empowers industry, and helps consumers make better choices. He's been recognized with international awards, advised on critical challenges in the food systems, and continues to mentor the next generation of leaders in food and agricultural sectors. Whether you're a student wondering where food innovation careers are headed, a professional curious about how analytics and policies shape what ends up on our plates, or just someone fascinated by the future of food, this episode has something for you. Sylvain, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, and good job on my name there.
I was hoping I'd get that right.
Yeah, not bad. And by the way, I've been doing my work for about 25 years now. So I've been around actually. I started my career in Saskatchewan, then moved over to Guelph, and I've been at Dalhousie for about 10 years. And now this year I'm on sabbatical, on leave basically at the
Yeah,
University at McGill University in Montreal at the Faculty of Agriculture and Environmental Science. I know a lot of friends there, and I'll be spending some time at Sainte Anne de Bellevue in Montreal over the next 12 months.
amazing. Amazing. Awesome. Awesome. That sounds exciting. So why don't we start with some fun rapid fire questions? What do you consider your superpower?
My superpower, discipline, I would say.
Okay. Yeah.
Every day, every time I wake up in the morning, I have a plan. I have a to-do list, and I don't really finish my day. I'm not satisfied with myself until I go through my to-do list. And for today, you're on my to-do list. So there you go.
There you go. I'm excited that I'm on your to-do list, and it's really happy that you're part of this. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thinking about school, a lot of our listeners, as I was telling you, getting started are, in various ages and stages in their career and their schooling and pivoting into different things. But always curious from our guests, like, what was your favorite subject in school?
I'd say finance was
Okay.
probably a big one, and economics, obviously, because that's basically that's my thing.
Yeah.
Macroeconomics, particularly, because understanding an economy, how it works, understanding all the moving parts affecting people's lives economically,
Yeah.
salaries, jobs, interest rates, how money is spent, whether it's by businesses or by governments or by people.
Hmm.
And so that certainly, those are probably the topics that I enjoyed the most at university.
And still part of your world today and what you do. And like as we were getting started, you're telling me about, and I hadn't seen yet the job market and some of the numbers are out there. So there's a lot of I guess turmoil and also opportunity at the same time happening, right?
I would say so. I mean, often we feel that some generations are impacted more so than others in terms of bad policy, and to some extent, it's actually true. But at the same time, as you just mentioned, Brian, I mean, there are opportunities all the time, and each era, each phases will offer different opportunities. It's just sometimes it's a little harder to find,
Yeah.
and frankly. I mean, for a decade or so, I'd say, 10 years ago or even before, for a while, it was really easy for students when they left university. They were offered a job in year three,
Yeah.
before a year before graduating. And I'm not sure it's a good thing because you want to have a hungry, crop of
Yeah.
workers going into the workforce, really. And so I think that's kind of what we're starting to see now, which is really, over the long term, it's actually a good thing for the economy. And
Yeah.
so I'm not overly concerned. A lot of people are saying, "Oh my goodness, it's not fair." I just don't see it that way.
Hmm.
If you work hard, I mean that's the one thing that I believe in, and I think a lot of people do believe in that. Is if you work hard and you don't give up,
Yeah.
you will eventually succeed.
Yeah. And your key word there about hungry and being hungry, I think, you know, like you said, getting job offers in your third year and be like, I can coast now my fourth year and whatever. When you're hungry and you're competing, it also brings out the best in you too, with hopefully, right?
Yeah,
To
no, absolutely.
stand
And
out.
if you go for a job interview or if you fail an exam, and I mean, everything happens for a reason, and you you want to face challenges throughout your life, especially at university. You want to fail because failure will actually make you a better person, will make you more resilient as well. We often, especially in Canada, we tend to not value failure. We tend to dismiss failure pretty much.
Yeah.
I was actually in Brazil in June, and we spoke about this over dinner with a group. And in Brazil, there's a different mindset around failure. To be honest, they do embrace failure, and they do recognize failure as part of a journey to learn how to
Right.
succeed eventually.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds like one thing I wanted to jump into now is first jobs, right? We all start our first jobs. So I'm curious, what was your very first job?
I was a farmer. Yeah, so I grew
Farmer.
up at yeah, I grew up in Farnham. I wasn't raised on a farm, but kids, especially boys, growing up in Farnham, that's what you did. You actually, you went to a farmer, or you people knew each other. It was a small town, and we were three boys at home, and all
Okay.
three of us worked on farms, and we started working when we were 12. Yeah, at
What?
a dollar an hour.
$1 an hour. Yeah.
Yeah, and when I was 13, 14, yeah, maybe some alcoholic beverages were involved, but again, it was 1982, 1983. So
Yeah.
different time, and it's
Different
rural
times.
Quebec, so very different. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But farming actually, so we picked up strawberries. We did some, they call it black earth. So you basically picked up rocks to clean up fields so it doesn't damage machinery. Hay season was a big thing, of course. Where I grew up, that's Quebec's dairy land.
Yep.
So hay season was a big deal. Of course, we actually helped farmers around milking, and milking in those days was at 5 a.m. and 5 p.m. Nowadays, it's all robots
Yeah.
basically. Cows, they go get milk whenever they want. In those days, it was 5 and 5 basically.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So
Mm.
one last question, and we're going to jump right into your whole career here. Describe yourself in one word.
Focused, I would say.
Focus. Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, thank you. This has been fun. Let's jump into your whole journey here, and this food professor's journey is really intriguing to me. Um, I too started in CPG, working for Dan and Yogurt right out of school. So I love the whole food industry type thing. So, but
It's a wonderful space,
isn't
and
it?
fortunately, oh yeah, and in at universities we tend not to value food a whole lot. We tend to do a bad job portraying the food industry and telling students that this is a great opportunity, a career opportunity. The challenge with food from farm gate to plate is that it's a high volume, low margin environment. And so
Yeah.
we tend to hear more about the bad things about food, farmers losing money because of climate change, or
Yeah.
or you're hearing companies struggling to find workers. It's always quite negative. Whereas in other fields, very urban fields, high tech, banking, fintech, those sectors are much more, I would say, accessible to students, and they actually can relate to those sectors. And frankly, salaries are much better. And
Yeah.
so that's the problem with the food industry overall.
I agree because it's personal to me too, because that's when I was, getting to know your story and having you on. It was something that kickstarted me and working with flavorists and food scientists, working with the yogurt company Dannon, and that the touching of the products and understanding what it was and what goes into it. Reflected one day and said, I've never heard of anything like this until I got to the job market. And if I had known, maybe I would have been a flavorist, right? Making strawberry flavors. Who knows? But it was just one of those things that I say. So I'm curious, what drew you to this field? Was it your farming background, or what drew you into this whole field of like being the go-to voice on food systems?
Yeah, no, it's kind of by accident in a way, and it's a lot. It has a lot to do. It was really mentorship that got me back into food. So I did start my career in food. Went to military college, of course, because my parents really didn't have a whole lot of money. We were three boys, and I have a twin brother. We were two going into CJEP and university, and I asked my parents, "Do I have any money to go to school?" And they said no. So I actually applied to go to military college. I had good grades, and they accepted me. So I basically got my degree for free, essentially.
Yeah.
But in 1992, when I graduated, it was during the last year of the Mulroney government. And if you remember, at the time, there were many cuts. And I suspect this is exactly what's going to happen right now with the Carney government. There were many cuts, and we were offered a package to leave, and I took that. And I actually became a lobbyist for the food industry, for independent retailers in Quebec. And if you don't understand the role of a lobbyist, because lobbyists tend to have to get a bad rap out there. Oh, you're a lobbyist. You're sold to the devil and all that stuff. Actually, there's some truth to that, of course, because your job is to push an agenda, of course, and influence policy to support your members and to
Right.
support a certain group. So I understand that. But to do a good job as a lobbyist is that you have to understand the entire industry. You have to understand where the power lies, who
Yeah.
actually is able to, and independent retailers weren't the most powerful players out there. So you had to align yourself with, the big grocers, for example, or even farmers, because farmers were very powerful in the province of Quebec because there's a union representing them. So you had to work with them. And as I actually worked as a lobbyist, I better understood food policy, food distribution. And while I was doing my master's degree, I met this wonderful person, Paul Beaulieu, and he saw a lot of potential in what I did for the food industry, and said you need to do your PhD in food traceability. And that's what I did, basically. So I finished my degree, my master's at the University of Montreal, and received a scholarship. And because I was becoming a father at the time, and got a scholarship to go to do my doctorate degree at the University of Sherbrooke. And that's kind of how it happened, really.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. And they
But mentorship was a big deal.
see that's key, mentorship and networking and all those things. We talk about that with everyone, and sometimes we don't approach it necessarily from the human way of mentoring, right? Like and
Yeah.
finding those people that matter, and not just one person, right? Yeah, I'm sure you have still. I have multiple mentors and for different things, and it's so key in what you're
Well,
doing.
I have the same mentors today than when I
Right.
started my academic career. So they're still alive and
Yeah.
doing very well. In fact, actually, I had lunch with one of them this summer right here in the Laurentians, and I myself am mentoring. I would say probably five people
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
None of them are Canadian, actually.
Oh,
Two Americans, one Australian, one New Zealanders, and one from Holland. Just
wonderful.
because I, just because I could, and frankly, I there's some selfishness to that because I get to listen to them. A good mentor listens, and while I'm listening to them, I get their perspective of food system, which is very different than in Canada, to be honest. And
Sure.
so, and as an academic, I get to reflect on on policy. And of course, right now, there's a lot of attention given to the Trump administration. And frankly, when you read headlines in Canada, you can feel that there's not enough effort put into understanding what
Mm,
exactly is going on.
yeah.
There's a lot of judgment, I find.
Yeah.
And my job as an academic is to understand. And once I understand, my job is to convey to the public what I think needs the information that I think the public needs to know, needs to understand. And so getting a European perspective, an American perspective, and a perspective from New Zealand, Australia, it's always great. So there's mentorship to me is a two-way street, really. So
Hmm.
I do help them in their careers,
Yeah.
but in return, they give me information that is quite valuable for my work.
Absolutely. And I think the key word there is perspectives, and getting perspectives, which I think are so important. I'm glad you highlighted that. And the other thing I would share too is you talked about mutually beneficial. And I tell people seeking that, like, I learn as much from the people I mentor, work with. And sometimes young people don't think they have anything to say or share, but they do.
Oh, they
Um,
do, absolutely. When you
right.
teach, so my philosophy in a classroom is pretty simple. I create this circle of knowledge. In fact, by the way, when I started my career in Saskatchewan, about 25% of my students were Indigenous.
Okay.
And the Indigenous students were incredibly successful in my class. Why? Because I create this circle of knowledge, and that's how they learn, right? They talk, we
Yeah.
talk, and we exchange information. And the professor is more of a facilitator, allowing all to contribute to a conversation about anything really. And often I will talk about something that just happened. So, for example, the jobless rate this morning going up in both U.S. and Canada. We would actually have a conversation about it. What's going on? What's
Right.
is it worrisome? And so we talk about that for about an hour, and frankly, students enjoy that very much because they feel well, they feel valued first of all, and
Sure.
they're. I mean, it's not because I have a PhD. I'm smarter than them. I mean, that's not my role. My role is to understand as much as them. And frankly, you just spend your entire career understanding that you know nothing.
That's
You're
true.
always constantly trying to understand what is going on, and you get stupid when you think you know everything.
I agree.
And there's a
Lifetime
lot of
learner,
that going on right
lifetime
now.
learner, lifetime
Yeah.
learner, right? So let's talk about food policy innovation. So you work at the Agri-Food Analytics Lab, which tackles everything from traceability to food to security. For students and young professionals, where do you see the biggest opportunities for them to maybe make an impact in this system?
AI.
AI.
AI. Oh yeah. Well, that's what we've been doing this for 15 years.
Yeah.
Forecasting using machine learning. I'm not a computer scientist, but I have computer scientists in my lab, and oh my God,
Yeah.
it's just when ChatGPT became democratized 2 years ago, I knew then that people will start understanding what I saw 15, 16 years ago, with AI. It's just an incredible tool, but I don't see AI as a threat to humans. Of course, the job market will change, obviously. I mean, it's
Right.
just unbelievably powerful what's happening right now, and it's happening fast. But I'd say that humans will just work very differently, and forecasting. I don't know if you know anything about forecasting, but forecasting, and because I know you have some experience with banks and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, how we approach forecasting is like a learning journey. So every year our flagship report is Canada's food price report. That's a forecast. So we basically predict what's going to happen to food prices for the next 12 months.
Hmm.
And forecasting is really hard.
Oh,
It's incredibly hard, and people tend to ask me, "Well, Sylvain, so you know what's going to happen with food prices over the next 12 months? What about the next 5 years?" I don't know. Like seriously, in
yeah.
2021, in December 2021, we were releasing our 13th edition of the Food Price Report, and 2 months later, Russia illegally invaded Ukraine,
Yeah.
which really just made everything explode around the world at grocery stores. How could you predict that? I
No.
mean, it's just impossible. And so that's why I think it's important for people to understand that AI will not replace humans. It will complement humans in their journey to better understand the future of food. And I'm talking about my space here,
Yeah.
food.
Yeah. Of course.
And so to me, this is really the one thing that we need more help, we need more expertise in, because the food industry, when you think about the food industry, it's a very traditional,
Hmm.
culturally driven industry,
Yeah.
right? People love their apple pie. You know, they'll host people for Thanksgiving. And you'll eat turkey and cranberries, and it's all about traditions and culture and
Very
how
much
you were
so.
raised. Very personal.
Yeah.
And people, when they think about technology and evolution, they say, "Well, I don't want my food to evolve. I want the same things."
Right.
But and so there's a bit of a paradox between what food means to people with what is about to happen with technologies and AI. And I think what we need is our brains, people that are able to bridge both dynamics, basically, I think.
No,
And so
absolutely.
that's what we're trying to do. And it's been incredibly hard because every day there's always like a challenge, a micro challenge that, like I'm asked, for example, well, India just embargoed rice exports. What does that mean to Canada? What does that mean to sushi or whatever? I mean, there's always something
Sure.
going on
Right.
that will get you. And sushi, I mean, 10% of households in Canada, rice is a main staple.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It matters. It matters a lot to a lot of people.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
that's just one example of things that we need to get better at. And of course, if you can predict the future more precisely, you reduce waste, you stabilize food inflation, you stabilize food prices, and you make things more affordable for everyone. And so obviously companies want to do that. But AI has done wonders in farming, has done wonders in retailing, but in the middle with processing, imports and exports, that's the black box where AI has done very little really, because they're still thinking about traditions, don't
Yeah.
break what's not broken, things. That's the mentality that you often see, and they're all family businesses, by the way. That's the other thing about the food industry. Many businesses are family owned, operated businesses. Don't break what's not broken.
Broken. Yeah, absolutely. So now jumping into AI, I want to jump in the power of data too, because data and analytics can truly change the way we think. How does that affect how we think about the food systems as well?
The hard lesson I learned over the last at least 10 years is that there's a data deficit in Canada, and in particular in Canada. We're not good at data collecting. So you can develop any models you want, but if you have crappy data,
Yeah.
it's just not going to work.
Garbage in,
And
garbage out.
Brian, I'm going to give you a shocker here.
Okay.
So now we're predicting food prices in Canada using US data only.
Wow.
Yeah. Why? Because Statistics Canada doesn't provide us the data that we need. So when you look at the CPI, the Consumer
Yeah.
Price Index, for example, so that's interesting data, but it's not granular a whole lot. If you actually dive into the data, it's not really, it won't tell you exactly what's going on in Montreal versus Toronto or Calgary, for example. And they'll have 77 different products, but what about chocolate? What about coffee? What about other things that's going on there? It's not precise enough to understand what's going on, how it affects people. There's 22 to 30,000 products in the grocery store. Statistics Canada really is not capturing what's going on at the grocery store. And I'm not even talking about food service yet. And restaurants represent about 40% of all the money we spend on food. In the US, so I work with Texas A&M. I work with Purdue. I'm actually at Purdue in next month, actually. Cornell. I mean, I'm jealous. They have so much good data, and they actually can forecast quite a bit. They can forecast quite well. And so we've been borrowing a lot of data from the US to forecast Canadian prices essentially because we're just
Shocking.
not good.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just not. And wholesale, so we have retail and wholesale because wholesale, like the carbon tax, for many months, politicians were saying, well, the carbon tax is making food more expensive. Well, we actually did some studies looking at wholesale prices. And in fact, yes, the carbon price did impact the competitiveness of the food industry. But retail wise, you can't say that the carbon tax really made food more expensive because it's a different dynamic. Prices may rise wholesale, but it doesn't mean that they will rise retail.
Right.
That's the thing. So, and wholesale, there's little data. So right now, so we're into September right now. The freshest data we have wholesale is February. And in the US, they do have data for August. Come on, Statistics Canada. Can you give us some
Wow.
love? We need more precise data. And banks, I mean, banks can afford to collect their own data and they have access to a lot of information.
Yeah.
But the thing about banks, if I can be critical for 1 second here, is
Sure.
that they actually will forecast. They'll say next year this will happen to the Canadian economy, but they never go back in time the following year saying this is why we
What
were
happened
right, and
last
this
year? Yeah.
that's what we do because we're
Yeah.
we're we're academics. So we go back 1 year and say this is what we predicted last year, this is where we were right, and this is where we were wrong, and these are the reasons why.
Yeah. No, it's so important. I also want to jump into the whole sustainability in the next generation because with climate change and evolving consumer demands, food systems are at I think, at a turning point. What skills do you think the next generation of, let's say, food leaders need to thrive?
I'd say two. One is curiosity. Again, going back to you don't know what you don't know,
Yep.
basically. So you need to remain curious as much as possible. And curiosity requires work,
Yeah.
and humility.
Absolutely.
So that's one thing. The other thing is that don't underestimate um, human contact. You know, show up, show up at events,
Yes.
show up at cocktail parties,
Yes.
connect with people like in a meaningful way.
Yes.
I mean, I give talks all the time. I got to tell you, Brian, this fall I'm giving 19 conferences this fall in front of actual physical people.
Thank you. Thank you for
and
doing that. 'Cause we
and
need
and
it.
the and the people in the room want to be with other people.
Yes.
I mean, it means a lot, and of course, my daughter's at McGill at the business school starting this fall, and she'll be at a couple of those
Yeah.
talks, and I want her to interact with other people, not because she's looking for a job. It's just she needs to remain curious and understand what makes the world tick right
Yeah.
now. It's not just money, and it's not just geopolitics. There's more to it than that. And you can't really find, as an academic, the best conversations I've had to to feed the op-eds that I write every week, to basically feed all the stuff I say on my podcast, comes from these hallway conversations
100%.
that no one wants to mention on social media, because there's some filter on social media. People won't necessarily post what they really think or what really is going on in business per se. They'll actually write all sorts of stuff, of course, but at the end of the day, you want to look at someone in the eye, a VP or CEO or whatever, and ask them what is really going on here, you know?
I couldn't
And
agree
that's really
more.
important. And so next week I'm visiting, I won't tell you which plant, but I'm visiting a major plant in Montreal, and they're going through some major change. It's a multinational. They're going through
Sure.
some major changes, and I'm meeting the CEO there. I'm meeting the CEO of another major company in later this fall, just a lunch. I'm flying
Yeah.
into Toronto just for lunch. Why? Because I want to get the goods. Tell me what's
Yeah.
going on here. So, and I won't tell anybody who I'm meeting.
Yeah. Yeah.
I won't tell anybody what you're saying, but give me information that I can use to inform the public in a better manner so people can understand what is really going on.
That human connection is so, so, so important. And
Yep.
it couldn't, and good for you for getting out there, encouraging your daughter too, because that's where, that's where everything happens, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, so thinking about inspiring future careers and listening to you, it's really exciting of how you've progressed through your career. How do you encourage, like you said earlier, it's not always talked about this agricultural and food systems as a career. We're always focusing on the things that we hear over and over, right? As the tech or the banking or the this or the, how do
Yep.
you encourage students to innovate and think of agricultural and food systems as an exciting kind of career?
Well, I I don't do it explicitly.
Sure.
I kind of do it by example and talk about the wonderful things farmers are doing. I mean, I do think that largely the industry is misunderstood. It's actually
Sure.
misunderstood by reporters. I can tell you, I mean, I give 20, 25 interviews a week. I can
Wow.
tell you, Brian,
Yeah. Yeah.
reporters don't understand the food industry.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I remember a few years ago, it was probably the most frustrating time as an academic. You know, you do the work understanding whether or not grocers were profiteering.
Hmm.
And you go into the financial statements, you go into financial results, you look at gross margins, you look at same store food sales, you look at everything. And we concluded that there's just no profiteering going on. And if there were any profiteering, grocers were actually making money selling cosmetics and prescription drugs and things like that, not necessarily food. And as I was talking to reporters, you can
Interesting.
tell that they just didn't believe it. They actually believe that Loblaw, Metro, Sobeys were gouging consumers. They just didn't want to, and they just didn't want to hear it.
Right.
And they gave a lot of they gave a lot of credibility to the Loblaw boycott that was going on Reddit, which actually never happened. It made, I don't know if you knew this, but the stock price of Loblaw doubled since then. So it's just it to me. I, a lot of people just simplify and they think that the food industry is their experience at the grocery store, but there's just
Yeah.
more to it than that. And so I kind of explained to them, you know, before you see that loaf of bread at the grocery store, there's a lot of work being done. And this is the kind of work being done. And I just try to explain to them, how valuable that work is,
Yeah.
hoping, hoping that they would actually value the industry overall.
Good for you because 100%. Like I agree with you. I think people want to sometimes dumb it down to what they think want to know, but sharing what you just shared and you're sharing your voice on this and opening up that conversation to think about more about how that loaf of bread got there, right? Don't just grab it and hey, So
Exactly.
it
Yeah.
takes
I
a
mean,
lot.
without curiosity, without the work to understand anything, and I'm not saying it's laziness, but
Yeah,
when you oversimplify things, when you adopt a linear way of thinking, that's when you make mistakes. And so you want to understand all of the moving parts really to appreciate the outcome, which is the price, which is the product. There's more to it. I mean, um, like sometimes, like when I often get the comment, well, how come this jar of pickle, the same jar of pickle, is priced differently from one store to another on the same street? So I get that. Like, so one is gouging. Really? Okay.
yeah,
So what, how do you come to that conclusion? Well, it's priced that and the other one is $1 more. So that's gouging, right? No, it isn't. It's a different product. It's a different location. It's a different market, you
right.
know? And I get them to think as soon as I say this, I'd be more preoccupied if all jars of pickles are priced the same everywhere. That's when I would get nervous. That would be gouging.
There you go.
You understand?
Yeah,
So as soon as I say that, people are saying, "Oh, I never thought of that." Well, yeah, because if all are priced the same, it means there's collusion going on, and that's illegal.
yeah, exactly. Wow, this has been such an incredible conversation, and I know we could talk for hours on some of this stuff, and you're so amazing with all your insights and ideas. And I wonder if you could think about I would say like one big takeaway, but not necessarily has to be agricultural food space, but what would you want our students, some of our young researchers, professionals, folks listening to this today, what's one piece of advice you might want to leave them with in general or specifically?
I'd say listen. Just
Hmm.
just listen. Everyone has an opinion, and everyone has is entitled to an opinion. There's a lot of opinions out there,
Yeah.
you know, but there's not enough listening going on. Just listen, and
Sure.
you can say what you think, absolutely, and I encourage it. But also take some time to listen. And if you change your opinion on something, and I've done that myself. I mean, I've been wrong, of course.
Mhm.
Um, Power to you.
That's
Power
right.
to you. This is not
Awesome.
about arguing. This is not about being right and wrong. This is not about, it's about understanding, really. And you can't understand unless you're curious, you listen to people, you listen to different perspectives.
Love it. Love it. Thank you. Well, that's a wrap for today's episode of Coffee with Convery. Sylvania, thank you so much for sharing your expertise, especially your passion, and also for building a more sustainable, innovative, trustworthy food future.
My pleasure, Brian.
Awesome. Awesome. So to our listeners, if today's episode got you thinking and where your food come from and where the industry is headed, share this with someone you know who cares about the future of food. Subscribe to the podcast and follow us on Instagram for more stories that feed your curiosity and most importantly, your career. This is Coffee with Convery, where we remind you that success isn't always about building or climbing that corporate ladder. Sometimes it's about building your own jungle gym.